Hello everyone, and welcome back to Factorio C Block. I'm Bobbin, and you're watching episode 12. I should probably mention again, this is a modified C Block. It's not C Block mod pack as designed, but we're still mostly dealing with the same problems and so on. As you can see, I'm sort of out on this little bit of land out in the middle of nowhere. I have been exploring. I used a bunch of landfill to go and create paths through the ocean to sort of do a little exploring. If we look at the map, here's my main island right here. And I started down here where I built the windmills. I eventually stopped building the windmills in that direction because there's a worm on this little island right here and I wasn't prepared to deal with it. But I went ahead and made a little jag out there and went off across the ocean in a few different directions looking to see if I could find some interesting stuff. And there are a whole bunch of islands with worms on them, a few with nothing on them. What I was really looking for, though, I did eventually find, and that was an island, this one right here, that has stuff on it that's harvestable, that's useful. And what I found on it, and just I have to zoom way out, was trees and shrubs, basically. If I go down here, maybe I can see a little better. So there are cliffs on here, and there are desert trees, which is what I was expecting. I really want the trees, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But I found desert trees, and there was a desert garden. But more interestingly, because desert trees and desert gardens were in the starting area, I found them. I also found a temperate tree, and if I can get it here, a temperate garden. So this actually increases the diversity of the different starting points for Angel's agriculture that I have. And that's going to be really good because as far as I know, if you don't have the temperate garden, there's no way to get it. And there's actually no way to get trees other than just to harvest them in the world. That might not be true. I'm going by FNEI, and FNEI doesn't give a way to get a first garden. There's a way to get more of them if you have one, but there's no way to get that first one other than harvesting it in the world, and there doesn't seem to be any way to get trees at all. So normally I would need to build over to this and maybe risk getting too close to the worms. I don't need to do that, though. I've got far reach installed, and it will let me reach over there and harvest them, I think. So yeah, I'm just going to harvest all these things on the island, get them all off of there and into my bag. So I have my temperate tree, 3 new desert trees, a temperate garden, and looks like 2 new desert gardens. So that's good. So it's time to run back to the base, and we're going to take a look at what's going on today. One thing I do want to mention while I'm on the run is I am going to change the basic kind of presentation I'm doing in the video series. I have been showing you a lot of construction, and so I'm going to change it so that I'm not doing as much of that anymore. I'm going to take and start building more stuff offline and then just explaining what I did afterwards. And the reason for that is I really think that the series is going very slow. And part of the reason is because I've been doing the building on camera and then not really doing anything off camera except for just fixing things up and doing basic maintenance and maybe building some land, that sort of thing. I want to actually get more done in the series so that we can actually make some progress, because I think ultimately for you, the viewer, that will be a better use of your time. I want to be able to explain why am I building this, what's my justification for it, or perhaps in some cases my excuse for it, and I want to spend less time placing belts and rotating them and placing pipes and getting it all wrong and tearing it all down and rebuilding it and that sort of thing. I'm just not that great at the building, so I want to focus on something else, and that will allow me to do that. So I'm hoping to be able to cover more useful topics for you in less time by doing most of the building off camera and just sort of focusing on mostly what I built and why, but I may go and also explain how it works. There's going to be some of that. I'm not going to leave you totally in the dark building stuff and just never explaining it, but that's going to be a change in emphasis from now on, and I hope it actually works a lot better and is better for you, the viewer. So, in between episodes, I did do a new research. I got wood processing 3. That was a green research, so I had to go and manually make a bunch of green packs. I hate making those things manually. They're very slow. That is also something that changing the emphasis is going to do. It's going to let me start to move forward a little faster so I can get to automating my research. I still haven't automated circuits, and I'm getting close to 2 days into the series in terms of time played, and I really need to address that. One of the researches I did in the previous episode was blue algae processing. That actually opened up the Mark II algae farm, which, if we compare it to the Mark I, it uses 30 kilowatts more power, which is 25% more power, but it's 50% faster. So that is an efficiency gain for the algae farm. And I've put one down here just to see how it works out, because I'm concerned that it's going to backlog, and it actually has done so. It's backed up, so I'm not able to realize the full additional throughput out of it. It's backed up on the assembling machine. So until I get modules and can speed up the assembling machine, or until I get the assembling machine 3, or until I break all this down and come up with a new design, there's not a whole lot of point in upgrading all of these machines to the Mark II. I suppose there's a little bit of an energy savings because they won't run as often. That may be an advantage for it, but it's not pressing. And what I'm probably going to do is, of these 12 algae farms, I will upgrade the 6 on top and leave the 6 on bottom as the Mark 1s for the time being. So the other project that I've done, 2 other projects in the meantime. One of them is still in sort of the experimental stages. I'll show it to you. The other one is actually in production right now. You'll notice that there's no backlog on this belt. So I have sort of exhausted all of my backed up wood pellets. That does not mean that we're falling behind on fuel. We're not. What it means is that I went and set up the new fuel pelleting process here. So instead of burning carbon, we're now burning charcoal pellets, and they're being made in this new setup. I've gone ahead and created a module, and there are 2 repeats of it here. This module basically, it brings in the wood pellets, it converts them into wood blocks, or wood bricks rather, and then into charcoal just as before. But instead of converting the charcoal into carbon, it now sends it over to this assembling machine and converts it into charcoal pellets. This gives the same gain as converting it to carbon in terms of its fuel value, but the output material is denser, so I can store more of it, and it burns slower, and at the same time it didn't require any carbon dioxide for input. Carbon dioxide is, of course, a sink on these pellets, so I'm actually being more efficient overall. And I've also gone and made a change over here. The silo I showed you in the last episode was for this purpose. I have now put it in place, and this is where I'm storing a surplus of charcoal pellets. And this is sort of gradually filling up. It's not very fast. I'm not generating a lot of surplus fuel at the moment, but it is sort of gradually filling up. These have 30 megajoules of fuel value each, as compared to 6 for carbon. So each one of these basically represents 5 carbon. So we are making some progress here on filling this up, and it's all been converted. I did sort of have a planned power shutdown. So for the first time in the game, I actually had the power shut down due to lack of fuel, but it was intentional, it was planned. I wanted to make sure that I got all of that extra carbon burned up. And so I went ahead and completely cut off the supply before switching over fuel sources, and at that point all these engines ran out of fuel and stopped. I did add 3 more steam engines and another boiler, so we have more power generating capacity, The amount of power we're using has increased a fair amount. In the last hour, we've been running, it looks like, what is that? 8.4 megawatts. We're going a little over 9 right now. You can see here where the power went off briefly. So that's sort of what's going on with that. This setup is actually working very well. I have not, it's first in line, but I haven't designated to make it priority using the splitters. If I happen to have a problem with it, I can do that. Over here, since I'm not using carbon for fuel anymore, I no longer have a separate carbon only line coming out of here. So I've modified this just a little bit, this module that does the charcoal and carbon for specific uses that require those materials. It's still pretty ugly, but it's doing its job. So other stuff that has happened is one reason I'm using more fuel is I did go and upgrade all of my electrolyzers to the Mark IIs. So I'm producing more slag than ever now. There's a pretty decent supply of it coming through here. Let's just take a look. You can see that it's not really ready to compress the belt. The belt is maybe half full, maybe not even quite that much, maybe only a third full. But it's going through here and it's all being used. So we're doing okay there. I did find when I expanded my production on the slag that my flare stacks were no longer sufficient to vent all of the hydrogen and oxygen that was being generated. So they're probably just a little hard to see, but I've got a couple of them nested down in here. It's kind of messy with all the jumble of stuff. They are set to overflow valves, so we got that. Now on the trees. This is related to agriculture in Angels, and let's talk about gardens first. Gardens are used to go and use these basic farms. There's also this bioprocessor which does some work on them. I'm not entirely sure how this works. I haven't used it before. And right now I need some additional research to get any recipes on these. I can't grow anything in the farm, and I can't do any processing in the bioprocessor. This is for stuff that comes from seeds from gardens. To get the seeds, we use this machine, and I have started it processing it. I put about half my gardens in here, my desert gardens that is, and I can probably go ahead and put both of these two desert gardens in there because you can make gardens from gardens. It's a very slow process, so I'm keeping some in reserve. Let me go ahead and put my trees and my temperate garden, my highly valuable one temperate garden, put it away until I get the technology to multiply it. But you can also put your gardens in and separate them for seeds. And so we've been doing that. We also get these exploration tokens that are used for research. They're used for the dark green science packs, which I haven't made any of because I haven't done any of that research yet. But we've got our exploration tokens there. This is a Benefran seed, and we have a Zelo squash seed and a Nil aubergine seed, and we're gonna run through all of these and make them. We'll have these seeds and we can grow these crops and see how they work out for us. I think they give mostly alternative methods of making chemicals as feedstocks into the petroprocessing and maybe getting some fuel, that sort of thing. But I'm not 100% sure on everything you can do with it, but I believe that's what the crops ultimately are, is chemical feedstocks. Let's see if there's anything else over here that I need to talk about. It doesn't look like there is. There's really nothing going on over here. Talked about the fuel. Haven't done anything new up here. Okay, let's go down, and I want to talk just briefly about what we set up last time in here. There were a couple of mistakes. One of the mistakes was that I didn't quite have the carbon dioxide connected up to the outside, and the other one is that I completely forgot to connect up the saline to the outside, and because of that, this all shut down pretty quickly. I did correct those issues. I'm also routing the mud out the other way, and that's involved in a new project that we're about to look at. It has stopped making bricks at this point. We've got, looks like 3,000 bricks here, and another almost 1,000 sitting in the furnace, and we've got a fair number of unfired bricks in here as well. All of the fuel everywhere has been converted over to these charcoal pellets. That includes this furnace. I burned up all the extra carbon. So this is a new project out here, and this is where the saline and the mud are going. The saline is going to a brown algae farm. It's just producing brown algae, and the extra is going into a clarifier using an overflow valve. And the brown algae is being used in this machine right here. This is a composter. This is from Angel's Bioprocessing. This is one of the new machines in the 0.16 version of bioprocessing. I haven't really used it before, but it takes a variety of different organic materials and converts them into compost, and it's very fast, and it doesn't use a lot of energy. So I'm just using brown algae because brown algae is really easy to generate just using saline as an input. It doesn't require carbon dioxide or anything elaborate like that. So it's just sort of dirt cheap, and we can throw it in here and make compost out of it. The mud comes down this thing here, and it's going in this assembling machine where it's being made into soil. Soil is made from mud and compost, and I will mention right now, I don't think that this machine is generating enough soil for the purpose that I'm using it. I'm probably going to have to rework this build just a little bit to get enough soil here, so this isn't really a final design, but it's working fairly well. Soil has a variety of uses. In this application, we're using it to generate tree seeds in a desert tree seed generator, and we're also using it in arboretums. Now, the arboretum is the new way in Angel's Bioprocessing 0.16 to produce wood. And before you would have done this, if you wanted wood, I don't think the prior version of C-Block lets you generate wood at all. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think the 0.15 version had any wood creation in it. You could add Bob's greenhouses to get it, except that I don't think you had any way to start it because it wouldn't give you that first piece of wood you needed. So maybe even that wouldn't have been sufficient. In any case, these machines, they're really nice looking. They generate wood. They use tree seeds, which come from the tree seed generator, and soil and water, and they very slowly produce wood. They produce 26 raw wood in 30 seconds. And these machines are actually the tier 1 ones, and they have a crafting speed of a half. So they actually take 52 seconds or 60 seconds to generate 26 wood. The calculations I did on this, I'm not going to guarantee they're correct, but in any case, the calculations I did, which could be wrong, indicate that this is about a 50% improvement. If you convert this wood into cellulose fiber, it's about a 50% improvement over the algae farms, and it uses less power for input. My goal in the short term is actually not to use this for fuel. I'm planning on using it for circuits. And one of the researches that I did, actually the only research I did between episodes, was wood processing 3. What wood processing 3 got me was the ability to make wooden boards from wood, which is actually how you would do it in Bob's Mods normally. It's just here you have to do all this wood processing research to get to it. The nice thing about this is the other way to make these, the way you have to do it from the beginning of the game, involves the paper process. And if we look at paper in FNEI, I've got it right here, there are 3 different ways to make paper. The way that you do it from the beginning of the game is you use cellulose pulp as input and produce paper as output. Then you have this other process that's more complicated that uses sodium hydroxide and chlorine. It produces more paper and sodium hydroxide. There's another one that's even more complicated over here that generates more paper and has all kinds of stuff going. Bottom line though, paper is only used for 2 things. It's used to make these wooden boards, and it's used to make something called a protective scaffold here. And the protective scaffold is part of the dark green research. If we go over here and see what protective scaffold is used for, it's used to make a ground sample, and the ground sample is used to make the dark green research kit. So really, paper is not something you need a lot of, and unless I need some of the other byproducts along the way, I may discover that I do. I would like to just completely skip making paper, and to do that, I can use the wood from this process to make wooden boards for circuits. So that's sort of what I have planned for this setup, is to make wooden circuits, or the first tier of circuits. The basic electronic board, I think is what it's called. It's this one right here, basic circuit board. The electronic board is the next tier up. And I'm probably going to start automating circuits before the next episode, and I will use this wood for that process. It may be that I find that I want to go ahead and use this for fuel generation at some point. It probably won't be this particular one in this location, even after I do a little rearranging to make it a little smoother. But I may go and use the trees as a substitute for cellulose for making this sort of thing with the wood chips. Over the long term, fuel is probably not going to be charcoal. I'm accumulating charcoal in here, and you notice I've got this big silo, but I've blocked off most of it, so it's only going to accumulate that much of the charcoal pellets. It's possible I will accumulate more at some point. The reason for that, though, is I think that eventually this will all be converted to solid fuel. We're not that far away from it. Oil processing is actually within our reach now. If I wanted to go and build the machinery and start it, I don't. I want to do more automation first so that I can actually get the base working a little better. Circuits are probably going to be before the next episode, and I will be showing you some sort of circuit setup most likely. And then we're going to be looking at, I think, probably ore sorting and casting so that I can get a little bit better and more flexible on the way that I'm generating my metals up here, because I really don't want to have this sort of thing going on with my metals. In fact, I might do that before circuit processing, because to do circuit processing I want to get these metals on a bus, and I don't want to have to take and put stuff on a bus and then rearrange everything to get the belts in the right spot. So it may be that I do metal processing next episode instead of circuits, or I might do both. We'll just have to see. I think that is going to be it for this episode, though. Changing the emphasis, you haven't seen me build stuff this episode. I am probably going to occasionally have building, but you're going to see less of that. Do let me know what you think in a comment if you have any thoughts on that, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.